The July heat in Phoenix, Arizona, was suffocating that Saturday afternoon when my world came crashing down. I was standing in my grandmother's living room, sweat beading on my forehead despite the air conditioning running at full blast, watching my entire family turn against me like a pack of wolves sensing weakness. "Maya, just admit it," my cousin Derek sneered, his arms crossed over his chest. "We all know you took it. You're the only one who had access to Grandma Rose's house keys." That he was referring to was my grandmother's antique diamond brooch. A family heirloom worth over $15,000 that had mysteriously vanished from her jewelry box 3 days after her funeral. 3 days after we'd laid the woman who raised me to rest, and my own family was ready to crucify me over a piece of jewelry. My heart pounded against my ribcage as I looked around the room at faces I'd known since childhood, faces that now wore expressions of suspicion and disgust. My Aunt Patricia sat rigidly on the floral sofa, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. Uncle Marcus paced near the window, shaking his head in what looked like disappointment. My cousins, Derek, Jessica, and Brandon, stood like a tribunal, their eyes boring into me with accusations I couldn't escape, but it was my own mother's face that cut deepest. Linda sat in Grandma Rose's favorite recliner, the same chair where my grandmother used to read me bedtime stories when I was little, and she wouldn't even look at me. Her hands were folded in her lap, her shoulders slumped in what I could only interpret as shame. Shame for me, her own daughter. "I didn't take anything," I said for what felt like the 100th time, my voice barely above a whisper. The words felt hollow even to my own ears, drowned out by the collective judgment in the room. Derek laughed bitterly. "Oh, come on, Maya. You were broke last month, couldn't even make your rent payment. Remember when you called Mom crying about being behind on bills? And now suddenly Grandma's most valuable piece of jewelry goes missing right after you were here alone, cleaning out her things?" The accusation hit like a physical blow. Yes, I'd been struggling financially. My freelance graphic design business had hit a rough patch, and I'd fallen behind on rent. But that didn't make me a thief. That didn't make me capable of stealing from the woman who'd been more of a mother to me than anyone else in this room. "Derek, that's not," I started, but Jessica cut me off. "Save it, Maya. We found your fingerprints all over Grandma's jewelry box. The police told us yesterday." Jessica's voice dripped with false sympathy, the kind that made your skin crawl. "At least be honest about what you did. Maybe we can work something out, you know? Pay us back over time?" My mouth went dry. Of course my fingerprints are on the jewelry box. I was helping organize Grandma's things. We all were. That doesn't prove anything. "It proves you had access," Uncle Marcus said, finally turning from the window to face me. His eyes, so much like Grandma Rose's, were cold and distant. "Maya, sweetheart, just tell us the truth. Did you take the brooch to sell it? Are you in some kind of trouble we don't know about?" The condescension in his voice made my stomach turn. These people had known me for 28 years. They'd watched me grow up, celebrated my birthdays, cheered at my graduation. How could they so easily believe I was capable of this? "I didn't take it," I repeated, my voice stronger now despite the tremor I couldn't quite suppress. "I would never steal from Grandma Rose. You all know that. Do we?" Aunt Patricia finally spoke, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Because honestly, Maya, you've been acting strange lately. Secretive. You barely talked to any of us at the funeral, you rushed through cleaning out the house like you couldn't wait to get out of there, and now this. Maybe we don't know you as well as we thought." The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioner and the distant sound of traffic outside. I felt like I was suffocating, drowning in their accusations and assumptions. These were the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, who were supposed to stand by me when the world turned dark. Instead, they were ready to feed me to the wolves over a piece of jewelry. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I absently pulled it out, glancing at the screen. It was a notification from my home security app, something about motion detection. In my living room. I'd installed the system just 3 weeks ago, after a string of break-ins in my neighborhood had left me feeling vulnerable and paranoid. Wait. My heart stopped beating for a moment as realization dawned. 3 weeks ago. I'd installed cameras throughout my house 3 weeks ago, including one in my living room that had a clear view of my front door and the coffee table where I always dumped my keys, purse, and anything else I was carrying when I came home, including things I might have brought from Grandma Rose's house. You know what? I said suddenly, my voice cutting through the tension like a knife. I'm done defending myself. Derek smirked. Finally ready to confess? No, I said, standing up straighter, feeling something like steel entering my spine. I'm ready to prove my innocence. I pulled out my phone and opened the security app, my fingers trembling slightly as I navigated to the archived footage from 3 days ago, the day I'd spent alone at Grandma's house. The day they claimed I'd stolen the brooch. What are you doing? My mother asked, speaking for the first time since I'd arrived. I'm about to show you exactly what happened that day, I said, finding the timestamp I needed. And when I do, I want apologies from every single one of you. The room erupted in skeptical murmurs and scoffs, but I ignored them all. My heart was pounding with a mixture of vindication and dread as I pulled up the footage and held my phone out so everyone could see the screen. This is from my home security camera, I announced. From Tuesday, July 15th, at 6:47 p.m. The day I came home from cleaning out Grandma's house. The day you all think I stole the brooch. I pressed play. The grainy footage showed my living room. From the camera's perspective near the ceiling. At exactly 6:47 p.m., I watched myself walk through the front door, looking exhausted and grief-stricken. I was carrying a small cardboard box, one of several I'd brought home containing Grandma's personal items that the family had agreed I could keep. Photos, letters, small mementos. On the screen, I watched myself set the box down on the coffee table and collapse onto my couch, my head in my hands. Even through the low-quality footage, my pain was visible. I was grieving, not celebrating some successful heist. This proves nothing, Derek said, but his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. Wait for it, I said quietly. On the screen. Past me got up from the couch and picked up the box, carrying it toward my bedroom to sort through later. But as I lifted it, the bottom of the box, weakened by tears I'd cried while packing Grandma's things, gave way completely. The contents scattered across my living room floor like confetti, photos of family gatherings, old letters tied with ribbon, a small ceramic figurine, and there, gleaming under my living room lights, Grandma Rose's diamond brooch. The room went dead silent as we all watched the footage of me scrambling to pick up the scattered items, clearly distressed by the accident. I watched myself hold up the brooch, examining it in confusion, obviously having no idea how it had ended up in my box. But here's what made my blood run cold. On the screen, I watched myself carefully place the brooch back in the box with the other items and carry the whole thing to my bedroom. The timestamp showed 6:52 p.m. on Tuesday, July 15th. The brooch had been reported missing on Wednesday, July 16th, which meant someone had taken it from my house between Tuesday evening and Wednesday morning. Someone who knew I had it, someone who had access to my house. I looked up from my phone to see every face in the room had gone pale. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Maya. My mother whispered, her voice barely audible. The brooch was in my box by accident, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. I didn't steal it. It got mixed in with Grandma's personal items that you all agreed I could take home. And according to this footage, I had it for exactly one night before someone took it from my house. Uncle Marcus cleared his throat. Maybe you moved it somewhere else and forgot? I shook my head. The camera has motion detection. It records every time someone enters or leaves my house. Want to see who came by the next morning? The color drained from Derek's face. Maya, I think we're all getting a little carried away here. No, Derek, I interrupted, my finger hovering over the app. I think we're just getting started. Because I have footage of every single person who entered my house that week. Including whoever took the brooch. Jessica shifted uncomfortably. Look, maybe we should all just calm down, calm down? The words exploded out of me like a dam bursting. You people have spent the last 3 days treating me like a criminal. You humiliated me, accused me of stealing from the woman who raised me, and were ready to throw me out of this family over something I didn't do. And now you want me to calm down? I was shaking now, not with fear but with fury. Pure, righteous anger at the injustice of it all. I want to see everyone's phones, I continued. I want to see who got texts or calls between Tuesday night and Wednesday morning. I want to know who knew I had taken home a box of Grandma's personal items. The room erupted in protests and denials, but I held up my hand for silence. Or, I said, my voice deadly quiet, I can just show you the footage from Wednesday morning and we can all see who the real thief is. The silence that followed was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that room as everyone avoided eye contact, suddenly finding the carpet or the ceiling incredibly interesting. That's when I knew one of them had done it. One of the people in this room, my own family, had stolen from me and let me take the blame, but I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The real confrontation was just beginning. The tension in the room was suffocating as I stood there, my phone still in my hand, watching my family squirm under the weight of their own guilt and the implications of what the footage had revealed. The afternoon sun streamed through Grandma Rosa's lace curtains, casting long shadows across the living room that seemed to divide us into two camps, me against everyone else. But now the dynamics were shifting. Now they knew I had proof. Maya. Honey, Aunt Patricia said, her voice taking on that sickeningly sweet tone adults use when they're trying to manipulate children, maybe we should all take a step back here. This is getting out of hand. Out of hand? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Aunt Patricia, 3 days ago you looked me in the eye and called me a thief. You said I was just like my father, and we both know that wasn't a compliment. Her face flushed red at the reminder. My father had abandoned my mother and me when I was 5, and ever since then, any time I did something the family disapproved of, someone inevitably made the comparison. It was their go-to weapon, and Patricia had wielded it like a sword just 72 hours ago. I was upset, she said weakly. We all were. Grandma's death, the stress of the funeral arrangements, dividing up her things. Emotions were running high. Emotions don't excuse calling your niece a liar and a thief, I shot back. Emotions don't excuse what you all put me through. Derek stepped forward, his jaw set stubbornly. Look, Maya, we made some assumptions, okay? But you have to understand how it looked. You needed money, you had access to the house, and the brooch went missing right after you were there alone. What were we supposed to think? You were supposed to think that I'm your family, I said, my voice breaking slightly despite my best efforts to stay strong. You were supposed to give me the benefit of the doubt. You were supposed to trust me. Trust goes both ways, Brandon spoke up for the first time, his arms crossed defensively. You could have mentioned that you accidentally took the brooch home. You could have called us when you found it in your box. I stared at him in disbelief. Are you seriously still trying to make this my fault? I had no idea the brooch was in that box until it fell out on my living room floor. And even then, I was grieving, Brandon. I was exhausted and heartbroken, and I figured I'd sort through everything properly later. I never imagined one of you would break into my house and steal it. Nobody broke into your house, Jessica said quickly. Too quickly. I turned to face her, studying her expression. How do you know that, Jessica? I haven't shown you the Wednesday footage yet. Her face went white. I mean, you would have mentioned if someone broke in. Would I? To the same family that accused me of theft without a second thought? The same family that dragged my name through the mud and made me feel like a criminal? I shook my head. I don't think I would have shared anything with you people after the way you treated me. Uncle Marcus cleared his throat loudly. Maya. This is getting us nowhere. Why don't we all just agree that there were some misunderstandings, and, no. The word came out harder than I intended, but I was past caring about politeness. There weren't misunderstandings, Uncle Marcus. There were accusations. There were judgments. And now there's going to be accountability. I pulled up the security app again, navigating to Wednesday morning's footage. Let's see what really happened to Grandma's brooch, shall we? Maya, wait, my mother said, finally speaking up again, but I was already pressing play. The timestamp read Wednesday, July 16th, 8:23 a.m. The camera showed my front door clearly, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then, at exactly 8:24 a.m., there was a soft knock. On the screen, past me appeared from the direction of my bedroom, wearing pajamas and looking like I'd barely slept. Which was true. I'd spent most of Tuesday night crying over old photos and letters I'd found in Grandma's things. I watched myself open the front door, and my heart sank as I saw who was standing there. It was Derek. Hey, Maya, on-screen Derek said, his voice slightly muffled by the camera's audio but still clearly audible. I hope I didn't wake you. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd check on you. See how you're doing after yesterday. Past me stepped aside to let him in, and I remembered that moment clearly now. I'd been touched that he'd come by to check on me. I'd thought it meant my family cared about me after all. How naive I'd been. Derek, present me, said quietly, not taking my eyes off the phone screen, would you like to explain to everyone why you were at my house that morning? Derek's face had gone completely pale. Maya, I can, shoo, I said, holding up a finger. Let's watch together. On the footage, Derek was sitting on my couch while past me went to make coffee. The camera angle showed him looking around my living room, his eyes landing on the cardboard box I'd left on the coffee table, the same box that had spilled its contents the night before, the same box I'd hastily repacked and set aside to deal with later. I watched in horror as Derek glanced toward the kitchen, confirming I was busy. Then quietly opened the box and began rifling through its contents. The room around me was dead silent except for the sound of our collective breathing. On screen, Derek's hand emerged from the box holding something that glittered in the morning light streaming through my windows. The brooch. He looked at it for a moment, then glanced toward the kitchen again before slipping it into his jacket pocket. He closed the box, sat back on the couch, and was scrolling through his phone casually when past me returned with 2 cups of coffee. You son of a bitch, Uncle Marcus whispered, staring at his oldest son in shock and disgust. Derek was shaking his head frantically. No, wait, you don't understand. What don't I understand? I demanded, my voice rising. Did you or did you not take Grandma's brooch from my living room without my knowledge or permission? I was protecting it, he stammered. I saw it there and I knew. I knew it was valuable and I thought maybe you'd forgotten about it, and your neighborhood isn't the safest, so You're lying, Jessica interrupted, and everyone turned to stare at her in surprise. Her face was flushed, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Derek, just stop lying. Jessica, Derek warned, his voice low and dangerous. No, I'm sick of this, she exploded. I'm sick of watching Maya get blamed for something she didn't do when we both know exactly what happened. The room went completely silent. Even the air conditioner seemed to hold its breath. What are you talking about, Jessica? Aunt Patricia asked, her voice barely a whisper. Jessica looked around the room, her eyes filled with tears and what looked like relief. Derek didn't take the brooch to protect it. He took it because he needed money. Because he's been gambling again, and he owes some very dangerous people a lot of cash. Jessica, shut up, Derek hissed, but it was too late. He called me Tuesday night after Maya left Grandma's house, Jessica continued, the words pouring out of her like water through a broken dam. He was panicking because these guys were threatening him, and he needed $15,000 by Friday or they were going to hurt him. When he found out Maya had taken home some of Grandma's personal items, he figured there might be something valuable in there. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. So he went over there Wednesday morning with this whole act about checking On her, Jessica went on, tears streaming down her face now. And when he saw the brooch, he took it. Then he called me and told me to help him cover it up by making sure everyone suspected Maya instead. You knew, I said quietly, staring at Jessica in disbelief. You knew this whole time that Derek stole it, and you helped him frame me? Jessica nodded miserably. I'm so sorry, Maya. I am so sorry. But those guys Derek owes money to, they're not the kind of people you say no to. They said they'd hurt our whole family if Derek didn't pay up. So you decided to destroy me instead, I said, my voice hollow with betrayal. We thought maybe Derek could sell the brooch, pay off his debts, and then somehow get it back before anyone noticed it was missing, Jessica whispered. We never meant for it to go this far. We never meant for everyone to turn against you like this. Derek was sitting on the couch now, his head in his hands. Maya, I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. You have to believe me, I never wanted this to happen. You never wanted to get caught, I corrected. There's a difference. Uncle Marcus looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past 10 minutes. Derek. Please tell me you still have the brooch. Please tell me you haven't sold it yet. Derek's silence was answer enough. Oh my God, Aunt Patricia whispered. Derek, what have you done? I had to. Derek exploded, jumping to his feet. You don't understand what these people are like. They showed up at my apartment with baseball bats. They said they'd break my legs if I didn't pay them back by Friday. So you stole from your own family, I said quietly. You stole from Grandma Rose's memory, and then you let everyone believe I was the thief. I was desperate, Maya. I didn't know what else to do. You could have asked for help, Uncle Marcus said, his voice thick with disappointment. You could have come to your family instead of stealing from us. Right, Derek laughed bitterly. Like any of you would have just handed over $15,000 for my gambling debts. You all would have lectured me about responsibility and making better choices, and meanwhile I would have ended up in the hospital. So instead you chose to destroy Maya's reputation and steal from a dead woman, my mother said, finally finding her voice. She stood up from the recliner, her whole body shaking with rage. Derek, I have known you since you were born. I changed your diapers, I took you to baseball practice when your father was working late, I considered you like a second son. How could you do this to our family? Derek looked around the room desperately, searching for any sign of sympathy or understanding, but found only disgust and disappointment staring back at him. I'll pay it back, he said weakly. Somehow, I'll find a way to pay it back. With what? Money? I asked. You just told us you're broke and in debt to dangerous people. And even if you could pay back the money, how exactly do you plan to bring back Grandma's brooch? How do you plan to repair the damage you've done to this family? He had no answer for that. The room fell silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. It was the silence of a family realizing they'd been torn apart from the inside, that the person they'd trusted and defended had betrayed them all. But I wasn't done yet. There was still one more revelation coming, one more betrayal that would shake this family to its core, and this one would hurt more than all the others combined. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity as the weight of Derek's confession settled over the room like a suffocating blanket. I stood there, my phone still in my hand, watching my family process the reality that they'd destroyed an innocent person's reputation to protect a thief and a liar. But something was nagging at me, a detail that didn't quite fit. Derek, I said, suddenly, breaking the silence. How did you know I had taken home personal items from Grandma's house? He looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. What? Tuesday night, when you called Jessica. You said you figured there might be something valuable in the things I took home. But how did you know I'd taken anything at all? I didn't tell anyone about the box. Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I just assumed. You assumed wrong, I said, my detective instincts kicking in. I was very careful not to take anything that might be considered part of the estate. The only things in that box were photos, letters, and personal mementos that had no monetary value. At least, that's what I thought. I looked around the room, studying each face carefully. So how did Derek know to look for valuables in my personal items? How? Did he know the brooch was even missing from Grandma's jewelry box? The question hung in the air like smoke. Uncle Marcus frowned. What are you getting at, Maya? I'm getting at the fact that Derek isn't smart enough to have planned this alone, I said bluntly. Derek, when exactly did you find out the brooch was missing? Derek's eyes darted nervously around the room. When we all found out. When Mom called and said, "Stop lying," I interrupted. The brooch was discovered missing Wednesday afternoon. But according to Jessica, you called her Tuesday night already planning to steal from me. Which means you knew it was missing before anyone else did. A cold realization was creeping up my spine like ice water. Derek, I said slowly, who told you the brooch was missing? Who told you before anyone else knew? Derek's face had gone completely white. He looked like he was about to throw up. Answer me, I demanded. Maya, please, Derek whispered. Don't make me do this. Derek Michael Peterson, Uncle Marcus said sternly, you answer your cousin right now. Derek closed his eyes, his whole body sagging in defeat. When he opened them again, they were filled with tears. Mom told me, he whispered. Every head in the room turned to stare at Aunt Patricia, who was sitting frozen on the couch like a deer caught in headlights. What, she said, her voice barely audible. Derek, I said carefully, when did your mother tell you the brooch was missing? Tuesday night, he admitted. She called me around 11 p.m. and said she'd been going through Grandma's jewelry box, doing inventory for the will, and the brooch wasn't there. The pieces were falling into place now, creating a picture that made me sick to my stomach. Aunt Patricia, I said, turning to face her directly, why were you doing jewelry inventory at 11 o'clock at night? She opened her mouth but no sound came out. And more importantly, I continued, how did you know to call Derek specifically? Why didn't you call the police, or Uncle Marcus, or my mother? Why did you call the one person in this family with a gambling problem and a history of needing money? Maya, you're jumping to conclusions, she started, but I cut her off. Am I? Let me paint you a picture, Aunt Patricia. You went through Grandma's jewelry box Tuesday night and discovered the brooch was missing. Instead of alerting the family or the authorities, you called Derek and told him I must have taken it since I'd been alone in the house that day. You knew Derek was desperate for money, so you suggested he might be able to get it back from me. For a price. Patricia was shaking her head frantically. That's not what happened. Isn't it? I pulled up my phone again. Because I have more footage, Aunt Patricia. A lot more. Including footage from Tuesday night. Her face went completely white. Maya, my mother said quietly, what are you saying? I looked at my mother, this woman who had raised me, who had taught me right from wrong, who had always told me that family was the most important thing in the world. How was I supposed to tell her that her own sister had orchestrated my destruction? I'm saying that Derek didn't steal the brooch from me, I said, my voice steady despite the hurricane of emotions raging inside me. He never had the chance to, because it was never in my house to begin with. The room erupted in confused murmurs, but I held up my hand for silence. The footage I showed you was real, but I edited the timestamp, I admitted. I wanted to see how far you'd all go to cover for each other. The real footage is from Monday night, not Tuesday. The box fell open Monday evening, the day before I was supposed to clean out Grandma's house. When I saw the brooch, I was confused about how it got there, so I called the one person who would know. I looked directly at Aunt Patricia. I called you, Aunt Patricia. Monday night at 10:30 p.m. I told you I'd somehow ended up with Grandma's diamond brooch mixed in with some photos I'd taken, and I asked what I should do with it. Patricia looked like she was going to be sick. And do you remember what you told me? I continued. You told me to hold on to it until after we finished cleaning out the house, and then you'd help me figure out where it belonged in the estate. Division. You said it would be easier to handle everything at once rather than making a special trip. The truth was spilling out now like blood from a wound, and I couldn't stop it even if I wanted to. But what I didn't know was that you were planning to use that brooch to solve Derek's gambling problem. You knew he owed money to dangerous people, and you knew the brooch was worth enough to pay off his debts. So you came up with a plan. Uncle. Marcus was staring at his wife in horror. Patricia, please tell me this isn't true. It's true, I said when Patricia remained silent. Tuesday night, you went through Grandma's jewelry box and discovered the brooch was missing. Then you called Derek and told him I must have stolen it. You suggested he confront me about it, maybe scare me into giving it to him. When that didn't work fast enough, you escalated to involving the whole family, turning everyone against me so Derek could play the concerned cousin and I'd be grateful enough for any support to hand over the brooch willingly. That's insane, Brandon said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Aunt Patricia, show everyone your phone. Show them the text messages between you and Derek from Tuesday and Wednesday. Patricia clutched her purse tighter to her chest. I don't have to show you anything. No, you don't, I agreed. But your silence is pretty telling, don't you think? Derek suddenly spoke up, his voice hollow. She's right. All of it. Mom orchestrated. The whole thing. Derek, shut up, Patricia hissed, but it was too late. She knew Maya had the brooch because Maya called her Monday night, Derek continued, the words pouring out of him like a confession. Mom spent all day Tuesday figuring out how to get it from her without anyone knowing it was planned. She came up with the idea of making it look like Maya stole it, then having me be the one to recover it from her. Derek, Patricia warned. No. Mom, I'm done, Derek said, looking up at her with something like hatred in his eyes. I'm done being your puppet. I'm done destroying other people's lives to clean up your messes. My messes? Patricia exploded. You're the one with the gambling problem. You're the one who got yourself into debt with criminals. And you're the one who decided the solution was to frame an innocent person, Derek shot back. You're the one who turned our entire family against Maya to cover for me. That was your choice, not mine. I was protecting you, Patricia said, tears streaming down her face now. You're my son. Those men were going to hurt you. So you decided to hurt Maya instead, my mother said quietly. She was staring at her sister with a mixture of heartbreak and disgust that I'd never seen before. Patricia, how could you do this to my daughter? How could you do this to our family? Patricia looked around the room desperately, searching for any sign of understanding or forgiveness, but found only condemnation staring back at her. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered. I thought Derek could just ask Maya for the brooch, maybe offer to pay her something for it, and that would be the end of it. I never thought everyone would turn against her like this. Yes, you did, I said quietly. You knew exactly what would happen when you started spreading suspicions about me. You knew this family's history of jumping to conclusions and assuming the worst. You weaponized that against me. Maya, I'm sorry, Patricia said, reaching toward me with trembling hands. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I stepped back, away from her touch. You didn't want to hurt me? Aunt Patricia, you destroyed my reputation. You turned my own mother against me. You made me question everything I thought I knew about my family and my place in it. You made me feel like a criminal for 3 days. We can fix this, she said desperately. We can tell everyone the truth, clear your name. My name doesn't need clearing, I interrupted. Everyone in this room now knows the truth. But what about the damage you've already done? What about the things that were said, the accusations that were made? Do you think I can just forget that my own family was ready to throw me away over a piece of jewelry? The room fell silent again, but This time it was the silence of people realizing that some things can't be fixed with apologies and explanations. "Where's the brooch now?" Uncle Marcus asked quietly. Derek and Patricia looked at each other, and I saw the answer in their expressions before either of them spoke. "It's gone," Derek said finally. "I sold it Wednesday night to pay off part of my debt." Uncle Marcus closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, they were filled with a sadness that seemed to age him before our eyes. "Get out," he said quietly. "Marcus," Patricia started. "Get out of this house," he repeated, his voice stronger now. "Both of you. I can't even look at you right now." "Dad," Derek began. "You are not my son," Uncle Marcus said, his voice breaking. "My son wouldn't steal from his own family. My son wouldn't frame an innocent person. My son wouldn't destroy the people who love him to save his own skin." Derek flinched as if he'd been physically struck. "And you," Uncle Marcus turned to his wife, "I don't even know who you are anymore. The woman I married would never have done something like this. The woman I married would have protected Maya like she was her own daughter, not sacrificed her to save her precious Derek." Patricia was sobbing now, but Uncle Marcus showed no sympathy. "Both of you, get out. Now. Before I say something I really can't take back." Derek and Patricia looked around the room one last time, searching for any sign that someone would speak up for them, but found only cold silence and averted eyes. "This isn't over," Patricia said, her voice thick with tears and something that sounded like a threat. "Derek is still family. He's still your nephew, your cousin. You can't just cut us out forever." "Watch me," Uncle Marcus said quietly. Derek stood up slowly, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "Maya," he said, turning to face me one last time. "I know you'll probably never forgive me, but I need you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. I was scared. Scared people make choices," I said, my voice steady despite the emotional turmoil churning inside me. "You chose to save yourself by destroying me. That's not fear, Derek. That's cowardice." He nodded, accepting the judgment, and walked toward the door. Patricia followed, pausing only to look back at her husband with pleading eyes. "Marcus, please," she whispered. "We've been married for 32 years. You can't throw that all away over this." Uncle Marcus looked at his wife, really looked at her, for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. But every word cut like a blade. "I'm not throwing anything away, Patricia. You already did that when you decided to sacrifice my niece to protect your son. You threw away 32 years of marriage, you threw away our family, and you threw away any respect I had left for you. I'm just acknowledging what you've already destroyed." Patricia's face crumpled, but she didn't say another word. She turned and walked out of Grandma Rose's house, Derek following behind her like a whipped dog. The silence that followed their departure was deafening. The 5 of us who remained, me, my mother, Uncle Marcus, Jessica, and Brandon, sat in Grandma Rose's living room, trying to process what had just happened. "I need some air," Uncle Marcus said finally, walking toward the back door that led to Grandma's garden. "I need to think." Jessica and Brandon exchanged glances, then Jessica turned to me. "Maya, I am so sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I didn't want any part of this. When Derek told me what Mom had planned, I tried to talk him out of it. But you didn't stop it," I pointed out. "You could have called me, warned me, told someone else in the family what was really going on. Instead, you stayed quiet and let me take the fall." "I was scared," she admitted. "Derek said those guys he owed money to had threatened our whole family. He said if I didn't help him, they might come after me and Brandon too." "So you threw me under the bus to protect yourselves," I said. "Just like your mother did. Just like Derek did. Everyone in this family was willing to sacrifice me to save themselves." Brandon spoke up for the first time since the confrontation began. "Maya, that's not true. We didn't know." "You didn't know what?" I interrupted. You didn't know that I was innocent? You didn't know that I would never steal from Grandma Rose? You didn't know that I loved her more than anyone else in this family? Because if you didn't know those things, then you never knew me at all. The accusation hung in the air between us. These were people I'd grown up with, people I'd considered my closest friends as well as my family. The realization that they'd been willing to believe the worst about me so easily was almost more painful than Derek's betrayal. We were wrong, Jessica said quietly. We were all wrong, and I don't know how to make that right. You can't, I said simply. Some things can't be fixed, Jessica. Some damage is permanent. My mother, who had been silent throughout this exchange, finally spoke up. Maya, sweetheart, I know you're hurt. I know you're angry. And you have every right to be. But please don't let Derek and Patricia's actions destroy what's left of our family. I turned to look at my mother, this woman who had given birth to me, raised me, claimed to love me more than life itself. And yet, when the chips were down, she had doubted me too. Mom, I said quietly, 3 days ago, you sat in Grandma's chair and wouldn't even look at me. You were so ashamed of me, so convinced I was a thief, that you couldn't bear to meet my eyes. Do you remember that? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Do you remember what you said to me when I tried to defend myself? You said, Maya. Honey, maybe it's time to just tell the truth. You were ready to believe I was lying even when I was telling you the truth. I was confused, she whispered. The evidence seemed so clear. The evidence was manufactured by your sister, I interrupted. But you didn't know that. All you knew was that your family was accusing me of theft, and instead of standing by me, instead of believing in me, you joined them. I never joined them, your silence was joining them, Mom. When you sat in that chair and refused to look at me, when you wouldn't defend me. When you let them tear me apart without saying a word, that was choosing a side. And it wasn't mine. The words were harsh, but they were true. And they needed to be said. My mother buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Maya, I'm so sorry. I failed you. I failed as a mother, and I don't know how to live with that. You'll figure it out, I said, standing up and gathering my purse. Just like I'm going to figure out how to live with the fact that when I needed my family most, they abandoned me. Where are you going? Jessica asked. Home, I said. To my house, where I can be around people who actually trust me and believe in me. Maya, please, my mother said, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Don't leave like this. Let's talk about this. Let's work through it together. I paused at the door, my hand on the handle. Mom, I've spent the last 3 days being interrogated, accused, and judged by the people who are supposed to love me unconditionally. I've been called a liar, a thief, and compared to my deadbeat father. I've been humiliated and ostracized. And made to feel like a criminal. I turned to face her. I'm not ready to work through anything. I'm not ready to forgive and forget and pretend this never happened. I need time to process what I've learned about all of you. And what I've learned about myself. What do you mean? Brandon asked. I mean, I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was. I've learned that I can stand up for myself even when everyone else is against me. And I've learned that blood doesn't make someone family, loyalty does. Trust does. Love does. I looked around the room one last time, at the faces of people who had been my world just 4 days ago. Right now, I'm not feeling a lot of loyalty, trust, or love from any of you. So I'm going to go home, and I'm going to figure out what my life looks like without the people who were supposed to be my foundation. Maya, my mother said, standing up from the chair. Please don't do this. Please don't let Derek and Patricia's actions destroy our relationship too. They didn't destroy our relationship, Mom, I said sadly. They just revealed what our relationship really was. And apparently, it wasn't what I thought it was. I opened the door and stepped out into the Phoenix heat, feeling the sun on my face for the first time in days. It felt like freedom. Behind me, I could hear my mother calling my name, but I didn't turn around. I walked to my car, got in, and drove away from Grandma Rose's house, away from the family that had raised me, away from the life I'd thought I knew. But as I drove through the familiar streets of Phoenix, past the places where I'd grown up and made memories with these people, I realized something important. I wasn't running away from my problems. I was running toward my future, and for the first time in days, that future looked bright. 3 weeks had passed since the confrontation at Grandma Rose's house, and my life had taken on a strange new rhythm. The mornings were the hardest, those first few moments between sleep and waking when I'd forgotten about the family drama, when my mind would automatically think about calling my mom or texting Jessica about weekend plans, only to remember that those relationships were now fractured, possibly beyond repair. But the afternoons were different. The afternoons were mine. I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop in downtown Phoenix, the one with the mismatched chairs and the barista who always remembered my order without being asked. My laptop was open in front of me, and I was reviewing the contract for my biggest freelance project yet, a complete brand redesign for a tech startup that had found me through word-of-mouth referrals. Funny how quickly things could change. 3 weeks ago, I'd been behind on rent and desperate for work. Now, ironically, business was booming. It turned out that the dramatic improvement in my mental health and self-confidence had translated directly into better work performance and more client satisfaction. Who knew that not constantly second-guessing yourself could make you better at your job? My phone buzzed with a text message, and I glanced at the screen expecting to see a message from my new client. Instead, it was from Uncle Marcus. "Maya, I know you probably don't want to hear from any of us right now, but I needed to tell you something. Can we meet for coffee? I promise I'll respect whatever boundaries you need to set." I stared at the message for a long moment. Uncle Marcus was the only family member I hadn't completely written off yet. He had stood up for me in the end, had thrown Derek and Patricia out of the house, had chosen the right side when it mattered. But he had also doubted me initially, had been part of the group that had accused me without proof. Still, something in his message made me curious. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready to have at least one conversation with a family member that didn't end in tears or accusations. I typed back, "I'm at Desert Bloom Coffee on Central. If you want to talk, you can find me here. But I'm not promising anything." 15 minutes later, Uncle Marcus walked through the door of the coffee shop, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen him. He spotted me in the corner and approached cautiously, like someone approaching a wounded animal. "Maya," he said quietly, "thank you for agreeing to see me." "I didn't agree to anything," I said, but my tone wasn't harsh. "I just didn't say no." He nodded, understanding the distinction. "Can I sit?" I gestured to the chair across from me, and he sat down heavily. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The coffee shop bustled around us, students studying, business people on laptops, friends catching up over lattes, but our little corner felt isolated from all of it. "How are you doing?" he asked finally. "Better," I said honestly. "A lot better, actually. Turns out that cutting toxic people out of your life can be incredibly liberating." He winced at the word toxic, but didn't argue. "I'm glad you're doing well. You deserve to be happy." "Do I? Because 3 weeks ago, you weren't so sure about what I deserved." Uncle Marcus sighed deeply. "Maya, I came here to apologize. I know that probably doesn't mean much to you right now, but I need you to hear it anyway." "I'm listening." "I failed you," he said simply. "I failed you as your uncle, as someone who claims to love you, as someone who should have known better. When Derek and Patricia started spreading their poison, I should have shut it down immediately. I should have defended you without question. Instead, I let doubt creep in, and I let them turn me against you." He paused, running his hands through his graying hair. "I've been married to Patricia for 32 years, and I thought I knew her. I thought I knew what she was capable of. I was wrong about that, and I was wrong about you, and I'm sorry. Why should I forgive you?" I asked, not out of cruelty, but out of genuine curiosity. What's different now than it was 3 weeks ago? Because 3 weeks ago, I was still choosing to believe in people who had proven themselves untrustworthy, while doubting someone who had never given me a reason to doubt her. Now I know better. And what do you know now? Uncle Marcus leaned forward, his eyes meeting mine directly. I know that you are exactly who I always thought you were before this mess started. You're honest, you're kind, you're loyal to a fault, and you would never hurt the people you love. I know that Derek and Patricia manipulated all of us, but that doesn't excuse the fact that I let them. I know that I hurt you deeply, and I know that I may have lost the right to be part of your life. He paused, his voice getting quieter. But I also know that I love you like you're my own daughter, and I'm hoping that maybe, someday, you might be willing to give me a chance to prove that I'm better than I showed you 3 weeks ago. I studied his face, looking for any sign of deception or manipulation. But all I saw was genuine remorse and, more importantly, genuine understanding of what he'd done wrong. What happened with Derek and Patricia? I asked. They're gone, he said simply. Patricia filed for divorce last week. She's moved in with her sister in California, and Derek went with her. They cleaned out their bank accounts and left town without saying goodbye to anyone. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. I know that must be hard for you. It is, he admitted. But it's also the right thing. I can't be married to someone who would sacrifice an innocent person to protect her guilty child. I can't be the father of someone who would steal from his own family and then let his cousin take the blame. And Jessica and Brandon? They're struggling, Uncle Marcus said. Jessica has been trying to call you, but she says you're not answering. Brandon is angry at everyone, Derek, Patricia, himself, me. He feels like the whole family has fallen apart, and he doesn't know how to fix it. It's not his job to fix it, I said. It's not anyone's job except the people who broke it in the first place. You're right, Uncle Marcus agreed. Maya, I'm not here to ask you to forgive everyone and put the family back together. I'm not here to ask you to forget what happened or pretend it was all a misunderstanding. I'm here to ask if there's any chance that you and I might be able to rebuild some kind of relationship, even if it's different from what we had before. I sipped my coffee, thinking about his words. 3 weeks ago, I would have said no immediately. 3 weeks ago, I was too hurt and angry to consider forgiveness. But time had given me perspective, and I'd realized something important: holding onto anger was like holding onto hot coals. It hurt me more than anyone else. I might be willing to try, I said carefully. But things would have to be different. I can't go back to being the same person I was before this happened. I can't go back to trusting blindly and assuming the best about everyone. I've learned too much about what people are capable of. I understand, Uncle Marcus said. And honestly, I wouldn't want you to go back to who you were before. What you've been through has made you stronger, and you should be proud of that. I am, I said, and realized it was true. I'm proud of how I handled myself. I'm proud that I stood up for myself even when everyone was against me. I'm proud that I found a way to prove my innocence instead of just accepting the blame. You should be, he said. You showed more courage and integrity in those 3 days than the rest of us showed in our entire lives. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the world go by outside the coffee shop windows. There's something else I need to tell you, Uncle Marcus said finally. About the brooch. I looked at him curiously. What about it? I found out where Derek sold it. He pawned it at a shop downtown, and the owner still has it. I bought it back. My eyes widened. You did what? I bought it back, he repeated. It cost me $8,000, apparently Derek sold it for much less than it was worth, but I got it back. It belongs to this family, and it should stay in this family. Uncle Marcus, you didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, he said firmly. It was the least I could do. And I want you to have it. I shook my head immediately. No, I can't accept that. It's too valuable, and after everything that's happened, Maya, he interrupted gently. Who else should have it? Derek stole it. Patricia orchestrated the theft. Your mother doubted you. Jessica and Brandon stood by and watched it happen. You're the only one who protected it, who tried to do the right thing with it, who suffered because of it. But the will says it goes to the eldest granddaughter, which is you. You're 6 months older than Jessica, remember? And even if you weren't, you're the only one who's proven worthy of wearing Grandma Rose's jewelry. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I don't know if I can wear it. Every time I look at it, I'll remember what happened. Maybe, Uncle Marcus said. Or maybe, every time you look at it, you'll remember that you're stronger than you knew. You'll remember that you stood up for yourself when no one else would. You'll remember that you didn't let anyone destroy your integrity, no matter how much pressure they put on you. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. This brooch has been in our family for 4 generations. It survived the Great Depression, 2 world wars, and countless family dramas. It deserves to be worn by someone who understands its value, not just its price. I stared at the box, overwhelmed by the gesture and the weight of what it represented. You don't have to decide right now, Uncle Marcus said, placing the box on the table between us. Take some time to think about it. But Maya, I want you to know that in my eyes, you're the true keeper of this family's legacy. You're the one who upholds our values, who protects what's sacred, who stands up for what's right even when it costs you everything. I picked up the box with trembling hands and opened it. Inside, Grandma Rose's diamond brooch sparkled in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the coffee shop window. It was beautiful, a delicate flower design with diamonds arranged like petals around a center stone that caught the light and threw it back in brilliant flashes. But more than its beauty, it represented something I'd thought I'd lost forever: my connection to my family's history, my place in our lineage, my inheritance. Not just of valuables but of values. Thank you, I whispered, closing the box and holding it against my chest. This means more to me than I can express. You're welcome, Uncle Marcus said, and I could see tears in his eyes too. Maya, I know our family is broken right now. I know some of those breaks might never heal. But I want you to know that you will always have a place in what's left of it. You will always be welcome at my table, you will always be loved and valued and respected, and you will always be family. To me. I reached across the table and took his hand. Thank you for fighting for me, even if it was late. Thank you for choosing the right side in the end. Thank you for giving me the chance to try again, he said. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful for it. We talked for another hour, carefully rebuilding the bridge that had been damaged but not destroyed. We talked about Grandma Rose and our favorite memories of her. We talked about my business and how well it was doing. We talked about his plans for the future now that his marriage was over. We didn't talk about Derek and Patricia, and we didn't talk about the rest of the family. Those wounds were still too fresh, those relationships still too damaged. But we talked about us, about the possibility of moving forward together, about what our relationship might look like going forward. When we finally parted ways, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: hope. Not for the restoration of everything that had been broken, but for the possibility of building something new and better from the pieces that remained. That evening, I sat in my living room with Grandma Rose's brooch in my hands, thinking about everything that had happened and everything that was still to come. The surveillance footage that had saved my reputation was still stored on my security system, but I'd never need to watch it again. I'd proven my point, cleared my name, and exposed the truth. More importantly, I'd learned who I really was when everything was stripped away. I'd learned that I was stronger than I'd known, braver than I'd believed, and more valuable than I'd understood. The family I'd grown up with might be fractured beyond repair, but I was building a new kind of family now. Friends who believed in me, clients who trusted me, and yes, even a few blood relatives who had proven themselves worthy of my trust. I pinned Grandma Rose's brooch to my shirt and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was Different from the one who had walked into that living room 3 weeks ago. She was harder, maybe, but also more confident. More self-assured. More aware of her own worth. She was someone who would never again let others define her value or question her integrity. She was someone who had been tested by fire and had emerged stronger than before. She was someone I was proud to be. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. My first thought was panic. Had something happened to someone in my family? But as I scrolled through the messages, I realized they were all from friends, acquaintances, and even strangers who had somehow heard about what had happened. Apparently, Jessica had finally told her side of the story to some mutual friends, and word had spread quickly through our social circle. The messages ranged from expressions of support and outrage on my behalf, to apologies from people who had heard Derek and Patricia's version of events first and had believed them. But the message that caught my attention was from someone I hadn't expected, my former college roommate, Sarah, who now worked as a producer for a local news station. "Maya, I heard about what happened with your family and the security footage. I know this is probably the last thing you want to deal with right now, but I think your story could help other people who've been falsely accused or manipulated by family members. Would you consider doing an interview? I promise we'd handle it with complete sensitivity and respect." I stared at the message for a long time. 3 weeks ago, the idea of sharing my story publicly would have terrified me. I would have been worried about embarrassing my family, about airing our dirty laundry, about making things worse. But now I realized that my story might actually help someone else who was going through something similar. Someone who was being gaslit by their own family, someone who was doubting their own perception of reality, someone who felt alone and unsupported. I texted Sarah back, "Let me think about it. Can we talk later today?" By that afternoon, I had decided I would tell my story, not for revenge or attention, but because sometimes the truth needs to be spoken out loud. Sometimes people need to hear that they're not alone, that families can be toxic, that it's okay to set boundaries and protect yourself. The interview aired 2 weeks later, on a slow news day when the station had time for a longer human interest. Peace. Sarah had kept her promise about handling it sensitively. She focused on the broader themes of family manipulation and the importance of trusting your own instincts, rather than dwelling on the salacious details of the theft. The response was overwhelming. I received hundreds of messages from people sharing their own stories of family betrayal, of being scapegoated, of having to choose between their own well-being and family loyalty. Many of them thanked me for showing them that it was possible to stand up for yourself and survive the consequences. But the message that meant the most came from an unexpected source, my mother. "Maya, I saw your interview last night. I'm proud of you for speaking your truth, even though I know it wasn't easy. I'm proud of the woman you've become, and I'm ashamed of the role I played in trying to tear her down. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm working on becoming the mother you deserved all along. I love you, and I'm sorry." I didn't respond to the message right away. I needed time to process it, to decide how I felt about the possibility of reconciliation with my mother. But for the first time since the confrontation, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe, someday, we might be able to rebuild something from the ashes of our relationship. 6 months later, I was standing in the courthouse downtown, watching Derek get sentenced to 2 years probation and 500 hours of community service for theft and fraud. Patricia sat in the front row, looking older and more frail than I'd ever seen her. She'd tried to approach me before the hearing, but I'd walked away. I wasn't ready for that conversation, and I might never be. Derek had eventually been arrested. When the pawn shop owner, prompted by the news coverage of my story, had come forward with information about the brooch, Derek had used fake identification when he'd pawned it, but the security cameras had caught him clearly. Faced with the evidence, he'd pled guilty to avoid jail time. I hadn't pushed for the charges. The district attorney had filed them independently after the pawn shop owner came forward. But I also hadn't opposed them. Actions have consequences, and Derek needed to face his. After the sentencing, I walked out of the courthouse and into the Phoenix sunshine, feeling a sense of closure I hadn't expected. The legal system had validated what I'd known all along. I was the victim, not the perpetrator. Derek was the criminal. Not me. Uncle Marcus was waiting for me on the courthouse steps, along with Jessica and Brandon. We'd been slowly rebuilding our relationships over the past few months, taking it one conversation at a time, one shared meal at a time, one small act of trust at a time. It wasn't the same as it had been before. It might never be the same. But it was something real, something earned, something built on truth rather than assumption. How do you feel? Jessica asked as we walked toward the parking garage. Free, I said, and meant it. For the first time in months, I feel completely free. That evening, I sat in my living room with Grandma Rose's brooch pinned to my shirt, surrounded by the contracts for 3 new major projects that would set me up financially for the next year. My business was thriving, my relationships were honest, and my self-respect was intact. I'd lost a family, but I'd found myself. I'd been betrayed, but I'd learned to trust my own judgment. I'd been falsely accused, but I'd proven my innocence. Most importantly, I'd learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to let people treat you badly, even if those people are family. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is stand alone rather than compromise your integrity. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply tell the truth and let it speak for itself. I pulled out my phone and opened the security app one last time, scrolling through months of footage that had captured the ordinary moments of my life. Then I deleted it all. I didn't need it anymore. The truth had already been told, justice had already been served, and my innocence had already been proven. I was ready to move forward without looking back. I was ready to live the life I'd always deserved, surrounded by people who truly knew me and valued me. I was ready to be free. The surveillance footage had spoken, and it had told the truth. But more importantly, I had found my own voice, and I was no longer afraid to use it. That, more than any recording, would be my protection going forward. That, more than any family name or inherited jewelry, would be my true legacy. That would be enough.